New York City in 1974 was crime-ridden, litter-strewn harbinger of filth and fear. Litter blew down the darkened side alleys of the main avenues, and steam rose from the edges of inspection covers along the roadways. The affluent were rubbing shoulders with druggies and winos, who propped up the street corners of the lesser-used parts of the city. Not a street was really free from the artistic and territorial markings of graffiti, a trope of which many cities suffered from during the mid-1970s. Yeah, it was true. The 1970s were a brutal time in New York City, and the not-haves looked upon the rich and middle classes as fair game for crime, robbery, and even murder. But like all cities, it needed the arteries of mass transit to keep it alive. Buses, yellow cabs, and the run-down subway system kept people moving in these choked streets. And so a plan was hatched, accomplices hired to mount the most audacious and fantastical hijack ever pulled off in New York City's history. 4 dangerous and heavily armed men set out on a simple task: the hijack of a subway train, and to demand $1 million for the release of all the hostages. The best of Manhattan's criminal stock, without fear and morals, would all be led by an Englishman.
May I get by, please?
No, you don't want to go in there.
Suppose I do anyway.
And I'll shoot your pee-pee off.
I'm Warren H. Cummings, and you're listening to the Cinematic Sausage Podcast, and this is the Taking of Pelham 123. First of all, to clarify a few things. In fact, I love travelling on the tube, here in London of course, and it's quite amazing to use as discovering parts of the city. But the New York subway system is quite a different kettle of kippers. I last travelled on it in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and even then it wasn't seen as safe. But it had a unique atmosphere of all of its own, like most transit systems do. The stations were still in the style that would have been reflected in this film, often dark and dank, places plastered with graffiti and litter. But nevertheless, it was a place where the real New Yorker would travel around. A great education for anybody who's never lived in or visited even a large city in America. 1973 saw the release of Morgan Feegood's novel of the same name, that is, Taking of Pelham 123. And here it is. Yeah, I bought a copy. I'm happy to say it's still as popular as ever. Feelgood's pen name was John Goodley, and it's that name that appears in the credits. He used a nom de plume for his crime novels and used his real name for what he called his serious work. He's a native New Yorker. Yeah, don't burst into song, please. But he was born in 1913, and he often travelled on the subway system. On one such boring journey in 1973, he found himself reading an abandoned newspaper, because they flow around nowadays on the tube system. And it was the headline of a hijacked aircraft in the Middle East. He looked up and down his subway car and started to plan a way that he could hijack the damn thing, escape and fly off to sunnier climes, because we all dream of that. A pot full of money, just think, flying off. Anyway, I digress. And if you think about it, that is no mean feat. They were trapped underground, under the busy, bustling streets of Manhattan. They've got to get away. How do they do it? Well, we'll find out later. He chose the station of Pelham Bay Park as the starting place and jokingly made the time 1:23 or 1:23 p.m. as its departure. Hence, that's the coding of the train would have been as it left the station. No, of which there will probably be many throughout this article. For years after the film was released, there was never a scheduled train that left Pelham Park at this time until, of course, the mid-1980s, where a few of the film enthusiasts dressed up as the hijackers and travelled on the service, much to the annoyance of the New York transit authorities. And there was a lot of annoyance coming from the MTA. You see, the New York transit authorities were not too happy with the film. In fact, they made the filmmakers take out an anti-hijack insurance policy to prevent the chance of any hijackers copying the film and saying they got the idea from watching Pelham 123 as their defence. This is really how seriously, in the 1970s, the authorities took the threat of this film. If it wasn't for the incumbent New York mayor at the time, setting up negotiations really between the transit authorities and the filmmakers, this project would never ever have seen the light of day. Such was the impact of the film at the time and its subsequent screening on television. It still found its way into modern day culture. The Beastie Boys themselves reference it in their song Sure Shot, and more famously enough, it's a homage made by Quentin Tarantino in his violent film Reservoir Dogs, and this will become evident as I explain the plot. Of course, the obligatory remake, there's quite a few of those going on at the moment. It was made in 2009 and starred John Travolta. However, it did not have the impact as the original, and that's the usual thing with remakes, isn't it? However, this taut drama is not often screened nowadays, and it's such a shame. But it has a DVD release, a 4K, gorgeous 4K release, which really, really makes it more sumptuous. Anyway, enough of that blathering, to the plot.
This is Pelham 123 to Command Center. This is Pelham 123 to Command Center. Do you hear me?
Okay, we'll leave him alone to his problem. This way.
Where the hell are you been? What are you trying to do? Screw up this entire railroad single-handedly? I want an explanation and it better be good.
Your train has been taken.
What?
Repeat, your train has been taken.
Hey, shut up in here! Shut up! I said shut it, everybody! Shut it up, everybody! God damn it! Pelham 123, what do you mean the train has been taken? Are you the motorman?
Negative.
Well, then who are you? Nobody's authorized to be in that cab except the lousy motorman. Now identify yourself.
Listen, train master. Your locomotive has been hijacked by a group of heavily armed men.
It what?
I thought that clip would get your attention. Anyway, a boring routine subway journey commences from Pelham Park Station. The carriages aren't too busily crowded, it's the middle of the day, and the passengers reflect on the riches and heritage that New York City has to offer. Well, not really, they keep staring at each other, because they are the riches within New York City, never mind. But if just one passenger had been paying attention, they would have noticed 4 identically dressed men board at 3 different stations. They're all wearing long tweed raincoats, trilby hats, glasses, and sporting very fake moustaches. Oh yes, they're carrying a long white parcel. Each of the men has a colourful name: Mr. Green, Mr. Blue, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Grey. And now you can see where the Tarantino idea comes from, or rather homage comes from. Mr. Blue is the leader, and he takes the motorman, or what we would call the train driver, hostage, and is joined by Mr. Green, who we later find out is a disgraced former subway employee. Oh yes, he's nursing a heavy cold, something that will be eventually leading to his downfall. As the train rumbles out of the station, the other colourful characters take up their positions. The train stops and is uncoupled, leaving the single carriage with all our colourful characters and our hostages in. They leave the remainder of the passengers to bugger off back down the tracks to get on the nearest station platform.
Move up a bit, Mr. Doyle. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you see this gun? Fires 750 rounds of 9mm ammunition per minute. In other words, if all of you simultaneously were to rush me, not a single one of you would get any closer than you are right now.
Hey, Mom, are those real guns?
I do hope I have made myself understood.
Meanwhile, Lieutenant Zach Garber of the underfunded and overworked transit police is lumbered with showing around a group of Japanese transit managers. He shows them around the central control room and then to his policing department, and the very underwhelmed and unimpressed number 2, Lieutenant Rico Patrone. The wonderful thing about this film is it's its real-life reflection, the lack of enthusiasm from the bored patron, the world-weary attitude of a seasoned cop such as Garber. In fact, to say the humour borders on dry is an understatement. New Yorkers traditionally have had a dry reflection on life, and it's often shown by their shoulder-shrugging dark humour. Nevermore is it more carefully and appropriately crafted than into this film. In fact, times of great tension are often diffused by wry humour. Oh yes, and the comical use of foul language as a norm.
Hey, Carmine, where's that Lexington 144?
Command Center calling Pelham 123. Come in.
Hey, Frank, you're hogging all my seconds.
What do you want from me? I got motormen calling me from all over the line.
Well, tell him to shut up and get off the air. Need some more lines open here.
Well, I never thought I'd see the day when talking to murderers took priority over running a railroad.
Get off it, will you, Frank? My only priority is saving the lives of these passengers.
Screw the goddamn passion. What the hell they expect for their lousy 35 cents to live forever?
Oh, you're beautiful.
I lost track, forgive the pun, of the number of times the characters said the word shit. Now, as a 12-year-old watching this for the very first time in the early 80s, it was refreshing to hear sharp, witty dialogue interwoven with everyday cursing. Anyway, enough of my teenage cursing memories. Anyway, the British actor Robert Shaw, him who tried to kill off Bond, Connery's Bond in From Russia with Love, and after this film, tangle with the famously oversized carp, is an absolute joy to behold. Playing a former army officer, come mercenary, his style is sharp, forgiving and coolly logical, and even never suffering fools, and never allowing that dissent with his own ranks of his desperados.
Comes to Mr. Brown.
Mr. Gray, would you be good enough to give that gun to Mr. Brown, please?
No, this ain't gonna go nowhere. This is gonna stay with me.
Mr. Gray, will you bring that gun back here, please?
So what if something's gone wrong? What if they're waiting for us up there? I want some heavy artillery with me.
Mr. Gray, I won't ask you again.
Blow it out of your ass, Mr. Blue.
Oh, my God.
Hey, take another look out there. Let's get this money.
Hector Elizondo as the antagonistic and trigger-happy Mr. Gray there, being duly dispatched by Mr. Blue, who decisively proves there really isn't any honour amongst thieves in this situation. Hector would go on to be a big name in American TV, but it was literally by being at the right time at the right place that he got this part. We glean from a snatch from conversation earlier in the film that Mr. Gray was flown out of the mafia for being a liability. Mr. Green refers to him as a bit screwy. Blue, however, doesn't mince his words and declares he thinks he's insane. Gray flirts with a hooker on a train, pistol whips a black man and addresses him in a very derogatory manner. Now, a line that the actor was extremely hesitant to deliver, I may add. Even in the 1970s, the N-word was definitely not acceptable. The black actor playing the passenger and Hector had a long philosophical conversation about whether his character should use the term. But as the black actor pointed out, you're playing a killer. You aren't going to give a damn about somebody's life, so why spare their feelings? So as a result, Hector would only do one take giving that line and refused to restage it when he was requested to. Now, they may be antagonistic rivals within the actual film itself, but he got on particularly well with Mr. Shaw, so much so that both of them had a passion for table tennis. And when they weren't filming, they were playing table tennis up on one of the platforms. And he later recalled that Shaw was exceptionally good at it. In fact, it's recorded somewhere that Shaw took on all newcomers and absolutely thrashed them.
Goddamn rush hour starts in an hour.
Will you shut up for a minute and listen to me? I got a new set of instructions.
I don't give a rat's ass to your fucking instructions. I'm not lifting a finger to help the killers of Kaz Dolowitz. Hey!
Now, you listen to me, you dumb son of a bitch. You don't do what I tell you, you'll be having dinner tonight with Kaz Dolowitz.
Jesus Christ, what are you...
Matthau's Garber there. He's such a beautifully crafted character, a total cynic. The cop who's seen it all, he's dealt with all kinds of situations, but he's really thinking at the beginning of this, are they really taking the mickey? And it's slightly intermingled with the slight concern that these jokers could be for real. In fact, any doubts of this being a wind-up are focused into crystal clear clarity when Gray heartlessly mows down a belligerent traffic supervisor who defiantly tries to board the hijacked train. Then, of course, Blue passes his demands, $1 million to be delivered to them within an hour, or one by one, they shoot the hostages.
We are holding 17 passengers and the conductor hostage in the first car. I am quite prepared to kill any or all of them if you do not obey my commands to the letter. Have I made myself quite clear?
You're out of your skull.
We're introduced to the lazy, unloved mayor of the city who cares more about his re-election chances than saving the passengers. However, the clincher for him is the fact that he will have a guaranteed 16 extra votes if he manages to release all the hostages unharmed. Oh my, how politics just hasn't changed one bit. Through subterfuge, and that's not easy to say, and by the skin of their teeth, Garber arranges delivery of the cash in time. However, worst is yet to come for the hostages.
Tower, calling command center.
Yeah, this command center.
She's moving.
Who's moving?
Pelham 1, 2, 3.
What? Since when?
Just started.
Hold on, I'll put you on a tie-in. Rigo, she's moving.
Who's moving?
Who do you think? Pelham.
It's too soon. We're not set up yet.
Which is probably why they did it. You heard from Daniels yet?
Yeah, he's in a squad car on Park Avenue South.
Back to Daniels. She's moving, sir.
Who's moving?
What's the matter with everybody? How many hijacked trains we got around here, anyway?
Overriding the safety controls, the criminals jump clear of the train, leaving the hostages to their fate. Yes, it's a runaway train. I'm not going to tell you how that ends. The desperados have done it. They fooled the cops, bagged the loot. However, as the closing minutes play out, a high noon shootout gradually diminishes their number. To calm down a little now. So the real world in which these characters live in is wonderfully crafted by the use of locations and the eye to detail set up within the studios. They were allocated a piece of disused line and a subway carriage, and of course a disused platform. However, there were stipulations from the New York Transit authorities. Shocker, eh? The station and the platforms had to be spotless. No litter, no graffiti or any kind to be represented on the streets. Represented on the screens. The stations had to be portrayed as safe, clean and a friendly environment. Such was the corporate bubble in which the transit authorities lived. It was all about showing people using the transit system and it being an enjoyable experience, something it most certainly was not. The idea of a pristine station and platform was absolutely laughable to the average New Yorker at that time. It was a crime-ridden transit system and something that would come back and haunt the director in the critics' reviews. Oh yes, nobody was to touch any of the rails. Although the power was isolated, the safety instructors came down there. They drilled it into anyone that, accidents do happen. Be really careful. We have isolated it, but, don't take the risk. But as you can see from the film, they didn't take a blind bit of notice of what they were told. Instead, they trusted to the subway workers that were assigned to look after them when the juice was almost certainly switched off. And so when it came to Mr. Blue's death scene, in which Shaw was naturally a little concerned about standing on what would have been the live rail, the director himself sat on the rail and ate his sandwiches to prove it's safe. Anyway, after the director's funeral, shooting recommenced. Nah, only kidding. All's well that ends well. And even the rats who often flocked to the tunnels when the food was being cooked were cast and shown in the picture. If you look carefully, you can see the odd rat scrabbling around. But they were very well behaved. The story is very taut. The tension is wound up and up to an unbearable point where the audience is convinced that hostages are all about to become strawberry jam. Anyway, in the last act, where Garber and Patrone hunt down the outstanding desperado, we see a wonderful three-hander played within a grotty New York flat. And Matthau's nailing of that ending with that hound dog expression that he gives as he looks round the door, looking straight into the camera, as if to say, "Gotcha!" Anyway, no time to talk about the links to the James Bond film Live and Let Die, the breathtakingly crazy fashions of the 1970s, Ben Stiller's dad, or how Robert Shaw tripped on the live rail setting off the sparks in his stunt shoes, and Shaw admitted he almost soiled himself. To round up, picking the most illogical place to have a hostage situation was a stroke of genius. Mixing it with New York cynicism and wit is just pure gold. Regardless of its age, Pelham 123 stands as a rigorous test of time. It's as exciting as humorous and as taut as it was in the early 1970s. The performance of the leads are barnstorming, and believe me, whenever you travel by transit, you'll never look at your fellow passengers in the same way again. You can catch it on Blu-ray. There's a sumptuous 4K copy available now, and it's available on social and media platforms. And that was the original version of The Taking of Pelham 123. You've been listening to me, Warren H. Cummings, and this, The Cinematic Sausage. Join me next time when I'm joined by a guest and we venture down to the dark, dank tunnels of Russell Square Tube Station, where something unsavoury lurks. Until then, bye-bye.